As the long-awaited rains drench the hills of western Mexico, the forest erupts into a symphony of sound. Giant toads, mollusks, and many other amphibians emerge from their hiding places, all racing to seize the brief window of opportunity to breed. Yet amid the chorus, one song stands out, the bizarre croak of the duck-billed tree frog, found only along a narrow strip of the Pacific coast. This peculiar animal holds an evolutionary secret, but this adaptation isn't exclusive to just one species, and is found all over the Americas. So what could this adaptation possibly be used for, and why does it continue to evolve around the world? Sitting between the Nearctic and Neotropics, Mexico rivals continents in terms of geographical diversity. It also stands out for its biodiversity, with more species than all but 5 countries. So it's no surprise that some odd and interesting animals have made their home there. And across these jungles, no creature is as widespread as the tree frog. As perhaps the most successful amphibians, they have reached every continent besides Antarctica. Appearing 70 million years ago, they have survived catastrophic events such as the extinction of the dinosaurs. Such a long evolutionary history means that we are only just beginning to understand their origins, and that they have a diversity unmatched among amphibians. The current understanding is that tree frogs are divided into 7 major clades, and it's within the Hyliinae that we find the greatest diversity, with perhaps the strangest belonging to Treefrogs, also known as the shovel-headed tree frogs, sharing little in common with their closest relatives. It was only with the advancement of genetic technology that scientists began to understand their origins. This same technology added another member to the shovel-headed tree frogs, the coronated tree frog, who has few similarities to its closest relatives. Living high up in the canopy, they are rarely seen, and they'd like to remain that way. By raising tadpoles in water droplets within bromeliads, they're able to keep them safe from predatory fish. This lifestyle is in great contrast to the Yucatan and duck-billed tree frogs, both of whom lay their eggs on the ground pretty much anywhere there is enough water, bringing up the question of if this is a result of convergent evolution. Did the two species evolve their characteristics independently, or are they just more closely related to each other? To find out, we need to take a look at geography, more specifically, rainfall patterns. As I said before, Mexico's climate differs wildly, with some areas dramatically changing between seasons, and others remaining virtually the same year-round. The Pacific coast in particular has the most seasonal variation. From September to June, hardly a drop of rain falls, but during the summer months, it rains pretty much every day, meaning it has both the best and worst conditions for amphibians. Many choose to hide underground in mammal burrows, whilst many others make their home beneath logs and leaves. But few have a strategy as genius as the duck-billed tree frog. Some time ago, in the deep past, an early ancestor of the duck-billed tree frog realized that if it used its head to block off the entrance to a tree hole, it could effectively trap moisture and easily get through the dry season. But their shape wasn't optimal, and so over time their ancestors evolved a large beak-like head that could more effectively trap moisture and easily get through the dry season. Over on the Yucatan Peninsula, the rainy season is much less pronounced, and we can see this in how the Yucatan shovel-headed tree frog evolved, developing a much smaller beak than its cousin. Only 3 species of shovel-headed tree frogs have been recognized so far, but there may actually be a 4th species out there. Populations of duck-billed tree frogs east of the Isthmus of Tehuantepec are thought to belong to a yet-to-be-described species. After all, they are completely separated from the rest of their kind and face different evolutionary pressures. The mysterious range of the shovel-headed tree frogs takes us back to the Ice Age. This part of the world was both much cooler and drier at the last glacial maximum, greatly reducing the amount of seasonal tropical forest, which the shovel-headed tree frogs depended on. In fact, the area of suitable habitat shrank to just these 2 areas. Overlaying the modern distribution of the frogs, we can see a pattern. They line up almost perfectly, suggesting that these fragments of tropical forest served as refugia for these species, from which they are only now beginning to spread out from. This leads me to believe that before the Pleistocene, they once ranged widely across Central America and continued to separate and reconnect during glacial cycles, explaining the tiny and extremely isolated population of Yucatan shovel-headed tree frogs in northern Honduras, as well as the northern subspecies of the duck-billed tree frog, which at some point lost its reticulated pattern and has since spread much further out of its refugia, and given enough time would eventually join up with the rest of its kind. The range of the coronated tree frog seems even more puzzling, ranging across many fragments of cloud forest from central Mexico to Panama. Without a long beak, the coronated tree frog needs year-round moisture to survive, confining it to cooler and higher altitude environments, meaning it would have actually benefited from the Ice Age, possibly once spanning an almost continuous range. Unlike its relatives, the coronated tree frog is a threatened species, with an estimated decline of 25% from 2009 to 2019. The amphibian-killing disease, chytridiomycosis, is to blame here, an all too common threat to high-elevation amphibians. But the story doesn't end here. The phenomenon of shovel-headedness isn't unique to the shovel-headed tree frogs. It evolved in other species too. This adaptation can also be found in Nyctomantis and Trachycephalus, the most impressive of which is Jordan's casca-headed tree frog, who is unsurprisingly confined to the single place along South America's Pacific coast that remained tropical forest into the Ice Age.